introduced, I will be delivering a message straight po from Senator De Lima. Professor Walden Bello, distinguished co-panelists, friends in the media, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant afternoon to all of you, and warmest greetings from my detention place here in PNP Custodial Center. I am honored and humbled by my inclusion in this distinguished group who are here to share their thoughts about Professor Walden Bello's latest work, Paper Dragons, China and the Next Crash. My participation in this event is proof of the truth behind the saying that when one door closes, a window opens. There may be one locked gate after another, forbidding stretches of high walls decorated with ominous barbed wires at the top, and armed police officers standing between me and my freedom now. But ever since I was placed under unjust detention based on false charges last February 24, 2017, life has brought me down paths I have never imagined walking in the years before my persecution began. And one of those paths has brought me here with the unexpected task of sharing a message about my thoughts on a book on geoeconomics and finance of all things, written by one of the brightest minds our country has ever produced. As some of you may very well know, I am no economist or even a political scientist. I am a lawyer by education and profession, a public servant by calling and by choice, and a staunch defender of human rights and the rule of law at heart. And with that, I beg your indulgence for a few minutes as I share some thoughts from my layperson point of view. Paper Dragon was a delight to read, especially for someone like myself who admittedly has more of a rudimentary understanding about how financialization works, or fails to work, as the case may be. I have encountered these events and concepts before, but mostly they were embodied in those seemingly ominously worded headlines in the business sections of newspapers, the ones that are carefully read, analyzed, and religiously tracked by businessmen, investors, bankers, economic managers, and so on. It's their thing, so to speak. Admittedly, I am part of the population who usually sit up and pay attention only when those headlines somehow end up on the front pages and in breaking news reports. That's the signal that things just got so serious that though we may not fully understand what happened, how it happened, and why it happened, yet somehow for sure it was no longer just their thing. It has now become our problem. So too, in my capacity as former Secretary of Justice, though I was not a member of the economic cluster, economic issues still came our way, mostly as strictly criminal prosecution matters, such as those in relation to the investigation and prosecution of large-scale financial scams, and occasionally in the SOJ's capacity as the Attorney General of the Philippines and advisor to the President on being consulted on the legal ramifications of particular economic policies or proposed solutions to economic problems. But now, after reading Professor Bello's book, though I would still not presume to claim to have gained any expertise on the subject, I am nevertheless beginning to grasp, in a deeper sense, why this tendency to treat the workings of the financial markets as some esoteric realm that only the elite should care about is very troubling and very problematic. When we think of financial markets, we think of Wall Street. And when we think of Wall Street, we remember that infamous line that defined and probably thereafter fueled Wall Street culture. Greed is good. Now, after reading Paper Dragons, even that, as crass as it is, it no longer seems to be the best cliche that most honestly defines how financial markets work. Boldly claiming that greed is good is just a company slogan. It's an edgy marketing ploy. Now the line that comes to mind is the phrase, to make a killing. It's an idiomatic expression that Cambridge Dictionary defines as meaning to earn a lot of money in a short time and with very little effort. It could supposedly be tracked back to the late 1800s in the US, where it meant to make a profit by gambling, whether at the races, on the stock market, in a casino, etc. It's like one tamad on steroids. That is, with exponentially higher doses of greed and laziness. I think it is a near perfect word to describe Wall Street culture because from what I understood, from all the cases studied in the book, while financial markets may be a playing field for the rich, it is also simultaneously a killing field for the rest, where the lives, the hopes, dreams, and livelihood of the common folk are taken to die and be buried. No, not even the strictly poor, but everyone else who are not among those considered to be too big to fail. We are all expendable. And that brings me to what I found most interesting about the book. Admittedly, I came in thinking that it's a book that would specifically be critical of the Chinese government and its economic policies that seem to be intent on colonizing the world through the use of unbreakable economic fetters. Yet, that remains to be a real concern. Yes, that remains to be a real concern, especially as the book described what happens after each fall. Not only did the ordinary people suffer directly and immediately, their nations were also, to quote the book, forced to yield large tracts of their sovereign authority over their own economies, such as when local authorities of one nation agreed to remove all limitations on foreign ownership of financial firms, accelerate privatization of state enterprises, including in key sectors such as energy, transportation, utilities, and communications, which are strategies that were basically meant to create new business opportunities for foreign creditors. It's the equivalent of extorting money from a hit-and-run victim in exchange for first aid and life-saving assistance. Though I still fear that we may be going down that same path, which will culminate in our governments yielding our sovereignty to our foreign creditors, thus making us slaves to our economic, political, and social overlords right here in the Philippine soil and within Philippine waters, Professor Bello's book transcends even that, as it seeks to tackle an even bigger problem, which is the system. The situation isn't as simple as China being the enemy, waiting to entrap and bury us in a foxhole of debt. China, or at least the Chinese elite, because how naive would it be to lump people of vastly unequal economic standing under one label? The Chinese elite is just some of the new players in an inherently predatory system. Interestingly, when I asked my staff to check out the origins of the phrase making a killing, they related to me that apparently, when you type the search words making a killing and stock market, by the time you get to the letter O, Google will automatically suggest adding the Chinese characters Chongwen, which means Chinese language. It seems that many people are Googling how to translate making a killing in the stock market in the Chinese language. What that tells me is that the problem isn't a Chinese problem, at least not in the sense that they are at the root of it. It is not even a question of the system being merely flawed or rigged. The system is the problem. The system itself is corrupt, violently corrupt. It is reflected in the jargon used, such as betting the gun and, of course, making a killing. There is something deeply wrong when, on the one hand, there are a few who make so-called Wall Street bets, treating finance as a game, while at the same time, an even larger segment of the population is desperately trying to apply poverty finance. They are those who, despite working multiple jobs, are still finding it hard to struggle to crawl out of debt and poverty. Recently, when news broke about how some individuals exploited the so-called infinite leverage glitch in the trading app Robinhood, one analyst called these people psychopaths who are exhibiting totally immoral behavior. All these are writings on the wall telling us one thing: the quest for civilization and the progress of humanity has been lost in the race for profits. I think that is the message of Professor Bello, with which I can relate. He is sounding the alarm against this killer mentality, which is driven by the search for profit for the sake of profit. Money is no longer an instrument. It is the monster of our creation that has now flipped the table, turning us into its slave. Every single day we wake up and we slave for money. Reforms are so difficult to institute because those who have the power to regulate have been afflicted by the moral hazard of being themselves dependent and beholden to those they have to regulate. These problems will persist because it is a system driven by exploitation, not progress. I think the question that we have to address, if the quest to hoard money, to chase profits at all costs, is self-destructive to humanity, what would be a better system? I think the solution is staring us in the face. Money, as a store of value, is merely an illusion of value. It is nothing but paper dragons. We have to chase after real values, real dragons. What are those? To me, those are also self-evident and are even written in the fundamental law of our nation. We put value on life and liberty first over property. We value a healthful and a balanced ecology and the preservation of the rhythm of nature. In other words, we should put value in those that create value, which is human beings and the environment. We have to put those over and above profits. While it is a good thing that philanthropic efforts by private individuals are helping to make headways in solving humanity's problems, such as the recent news that a Bill and Melinda Gates funded invention could potentially solve malnutrition, such scientific progress and innovations should not be dependent on the altruism of the ultra-rich. We as a society have to make addressing our social problems the goal and not just the uncertain byproduct of profit seeking. Real things with real value have to be at the center of human endeavors. At least this is the message that I gleaned from the book. Admittedly, we all have our own biases, and we all see the world through our own personal lens. And the lens that I wear is that of human rights, equality, justice, rule of law, and democracy. So I appreciate Professor Bello's book through that lens. And in that sense, I feel that we are kindred spirits. We are both sounding the alarm against violent systems, systems that put a premium on making a killing. I only hope that he fares better than I did when I sounded my own alarm. In 5 days, I will be under detention for 1,000 days. If that is the price I have to pay in order to spread my own message of putting people's lives and above profits and above politics, then so be it. And on that note, I would like to thank Professor Bello for being one of my pillars of strength in the last 2.5 years. Your faith in me, in my innocence, and in the justness of my cause has never wavered, and because of that, my own strength has likewise never faltered. You have made my 1,000 days of detention a great learning adventure because of the books you regularly sent my way. I thank you, not just for your brilliant mind, but even more so for your humanity, for putting human beings at the center of your discourse. On my copy of the book you wrote, In Friendship and Solidarity, I thank you for your friendship and congratulate you on the launch of such an enlightening book. The world needs more of your insights and more people with your heart and intellect. Again, thank you, and it is an honor to be a part of this event. Maraming salamat.